and technological transformation, catalyzing integration, trade, and job creation. Hence, the continent needs to invest in digital infrastructure, improving digital skills, and creating an enabling regulatory environment to unlock the digital potential. The discussion in this session will bring together key players in the digital sector to contribute to the conceptualization of the research program and to make it more focused on Africa's new development priorities. So I would like to invite the presenters, the panelists in this session. The session will be chaired by Professor Isaac Atias of Sabancı University, Turkey. I would like to request Professor Isaac to kindly join us in front here. The panelists include Oscar Otieno, Humphrey Njogu, Professor Ogudrian Samoni, and Dr. Daniel Amanja. Professor Isaac will introduce the panelists, but I'll have the pleasure to introduce him before he welcomes the panelists. Professor Isaac is an independent researcher and a research fellow of the Economic Research Forum. He is a coordinator of the AERC research project on data governance phase 2. He was an associate professor of economics at Sabancı University in Istanbul, Turkey, starting 1998 until retirement in 2019. He was also the director of the TU SIED Sabancı University, that is Competitiveness Forum between 2011 to 2019. But before that, he worked for the World Bank between 1989 and 1998. He has been consulting the World Bank and IFC primarily on digitalization, especially of micro-enterprises in Africa, and climate change. He received his PhD in economics from New York University in 1988. His research areas include data governance, digitalization, climate finance, productivity, industrial policy, and competition policy, as well as regulation of network industries. Let's welcome Professor Isaac with a round of applause as he introduces the rest of the panelists. The floor is yours, Prof.
Thank you very much. I think two of our speakers, Dr. Oscar Otieno, or Mr. Oscar Otieno, who is Deputy Data Commissioner of Kenya, and Dr. Jongu, who is from Kipra. I guess we should continue with our session. Thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, I have been involved, I had the honor of being involved in the second phase of the data governance project of the AERC. We are in the process of preparing the book volume of consisting of the papers that were presented at the project, which should be available in the next few months. Digitalization and the growth of the data economy is on the one hand, it creates tremendous opportunities, and at the same time, it creates very important risks. What are the opportunities? The opportunities are potential very large increases in enterprise productivity, acceleration of economic growth, increases in welfare of households, improved accountability of governance systems, because when citizens have more information, they are better able to monitor those who have political or social power, and more data gives power to the citizens of a country. And in addition, they are, it provides important new opportunities for trade through digital trade, increases in employment, and increases in overall skills, especially with the introduction and adoption of artificial intelligence. But at the same time, it also introduces a number of very significant risks. What are those risks? One important risk is monopolization, right? Those who provide the data have much less power than those who capture data and process data and add value to it and make profits out of it. So we know that we see how the emergence of the data economy has produced what they call the tech superstar companies. It has the potential of increasing inequalities. Digital divides already exist in many parts of the world, including even in richer countries. And the rapid acceleration of the data economy and rapid adoption, emergence and adoption of artificial intelligence has the potential of increasing these inequalities. It has the potential of endangering privacy and increasing state surveillance, right? So a lot depends, the economic consequences of the data economy and digitalization depends a lot on how data is governed, okay? So that's the importance of the data governance project. In this panel, we are lucky to have two important speakers. I will start with Dr. Daniel Amaja. Dr. Daniel Amaja has recently been appointed as the chairperson of the board of directors of the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. He has 30 years of experience in economics, fiscal, monetary, and exchange rate policy formulation and implementation. He has deep experience in macro modeling, in regional integration. Previously, he also had positions in the Ministry of Finance as principal economist, as well as trainer and budget analyst. And he has a PhD from University of Nottingham. And my question to Dr. Amanja is, with the emergence of the new data economy, what are the new challenges that are faced by national statistical agencies. What roles, are there any new roles that statistical agencies are faced with the emergence of new types of data? And what can the statistical agencies do to prepare themselves for these roles? I thought maybe in the first round we would have around 10 to 15 minutes, and then we can make a second round, and then we can go for questions from the public. Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed.
Thank you. Good morning. As you said, I was recently appointed chair, so I'll be talking in terms of what we are doing as a bureau. And the first, I would want to state the mandate of the bureau, that is the National Bureau of Statistics, is obviously, like any other country, is to collect, compile, publish, disseminate statistical information for the country. It coordinates the national statistical systems, as well as making sure that it is the custodian of official statistics in the country. As such, the National Bureau of Statistics in Kenya is aware of the changing data ecosystem, and they are putting in place measures to make sure that they survive in the fast changing world. In terms of the role national statistics offices do, I have about 4 of them that I think are critical, not only in Kenya, but elsewhere in the world. First is to be the steward of data and governance in the country by setting standards that will ensure we produce quality, dependable data. Data that can inform policy. We have to set the guidelines to make sure that data produced is of quality, is reliable, and is inclusive. The other related to that is the promotion of data privacy. There are a lot of issues to do with the data protection and all that, and there are acts, and even within our constitution, there is a way the government is putting things in place to make sure that they protect the privacy of the information they get. And towards this, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics is implementing the second Kenya Strategy for Development of Statistics, which covers the period 2023-2028, which focuses on data-driven culture for sustainable development of the statistical system in the country. This strategy also aims at strengthening the coordination of data statistics, the way we capture it across the national statistical system, and it aims also as building capacity, because there are many things that are coming to do with the AI, with the machine learning, with big data analytics. So that strategy is aiming at equipping the staff to be able to use these new technologies. We are also revising the Statistics Act to make sure, and the aim is we want to start a National Institute of Statistics and create a one-stop center for official statistics. Those are the 2 objectives that the revision is aiming at. That is to start that institute to train statistics, statisticians, of course, partnering with the universities, and also one-stop center for official statistics in the country. The second objective, I think, or the role that national statistics offices should do is to integrate new data sets. And in mind, we want to leverage the big data and embrace these non-traditional sources of data, the mobile data, the social media data, and other sources that are internet-based, the scanners and all that. So I think it is the role of the National Statistics Bureau to ensure that we now embrace these new sources of data. We also want, as a statistic office, to enhance public-private partnerships by building partnerships with private sector as well as technology companies. And that way, we'll make access to high-value data more transparent and easy to access if we have this partnership. And as a bureau, we have already embarked on integrating artificial intelligence training, machine learning, and the big data analytics, because we want to improve the timeliness and the accuracy of the data that we give to the for policy making. There are many other innovations being done, including there's something called the National Plan for Advancement of Environmental Economic Data, where now we are creating what we are calling natural economic data, where we are focusing on energy accounts, water accounts, forest accounts, and other ecosystems within the system that are normally escaped from the mainstream collection of data. That role, in my view, is capacity building and innovation. And this, we are focusing on upgrading our skills, investing in skills, and also adopting modern tools for data capture, particularly the cloud computing, machine learning, and automation of our systems. And the last role, in my view, is to improve data access and democratize the data. And in this, we have in mind the open data platforms, where we want to create easy-to-use portals for the public. Yeah, and that way, it will make data accessible to many people. We want to support evidence-based policy making. We want to improve transparency and also combat misinformation, because I think the social platform has a lot of information that is not necessarily true. So we would want to have a place where you can counter-check whatever information you are getting out there. So in terms of the, I think, opportunities the Bureau has is to partner with the other firms, private sector, as I said, and also with the tech firms, and of course, investing in capacity building. Challenges, as we see it, of course, we have limited integration of big data and the emerging technologies in official statistics. I think that is an area that has to be worked on. Of course, there are concerns about the data privacy and the security. Another challenge, of course, is the capacity gaps that we have. In advanced particular analytics, AI and machine learning, this is the new areas, and we don't seem to have enough personnel in that area. We also have as a challenge fragmented data ecosystems and what I can call institutional silos, where institutions are working their own data sets without a mechanism for interlinking these data sets and comparing them for use. And of course, there is a challenge of issue of public trust and disinformation or misinformation in the digital space. I think I could stop there. There are many things we could discuss, but for now I can stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amaja. This has been, you've covered most of the landscape. It's a very insightful presentation. Really grateful for that. Our second speaker is Professor Ogundiran Sumnoni. Professor Sumnoni actually is also a participant in the Data Governance Project Phase 2, and he wrote a very interesting paper on the data economy value chain, and he is Associate Professor of Innovation Policy and Management at the Wits Business School at University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. And he works at the intersection of innovation, technology, and economic development, with special emphasis on the Global South and Africa. Thank you for being with us, Professor Sumoni. My question to you will be related to your recent work. And so if you could speak about to what extent standard measures of digitalization actually capture the degree of progress in the data economy of a country. What sort of an analytical approach should one adopt to assess the degree of development of digitalization? And you called it endogenous technical change in your paper. And what sort of indicator framework, what sort of data should we have access to, or should the public have access to, so that we can make a good judgment as to where a country stands or where a region stands with respect to the potentials that the data economy offers? Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Prof. Isaac. So what we attempted to do in the paper that you're talking about is to get a granular sense of where the opportunities are in the big data economy for actual sustainable societal transformation. And so I'm a policy scholar based in a business school. So I work with economists who are usually very interested in aggregate analysis, especially, let's say, macroeconomists for the whole society. And so they're looking for indicators that they think can capture a phenomenon and that is generalizable to the rest of the society or whatever the region. But there are other ways, complementary ways to look at this evolution of economic development at the sectoral level, at the firm level, in communities, and so on. So we did start by looking at the aggregate data. And so we'll look at things like mobile subscriptions. So something like 88 Africans out of 100 have a cell phone. The global average is over 100 subscriptions per 100 people, which means people have more than one cell phone. So it doesn't look that bad. We look at access to the internet, and we'll see that overall in sub-Saharan Africa in particular, the average is well below 50%, probably on the order of 35%, whereas the global average is over 70%. So we start to see that there is a disconnect between having a cell phone and what you do with that cell phone. Internet access doesn't follow. And then you look at broadband access. Less than one African out of 100 has access to broadband internet, whereas globally it's 18 people per 100. And so we see that despite this digital access, if you think of a mobile phone as a digital technology, that doesn't what can be done with it from an internet point of view is limited. And then if you compare mobile data to broadband, then participating in the digital economy, e-learning, programming, access to digital platforms is severely limited by mobile data versus platforms versus broadband. So this we're calling a way to read the data in a way that's meaningful for intervening to upgrade a digital technological capabilities, what we're calling endogenous digital capabilities. So how do we go from there? Then we say, well, okay, if we were to invest in digital capabilities, how do we know that we're achieving progress? Is the GDP growth rate increasing? How do we know? So we look at studies from around the world, And as the introductory speaker to this panel was suggesting, this year's Nobel Prize in Economics was given to 3 economists who essentially elevated the role of innovation and in particular creative destruction in long-term economic growth. But in 2018, not that long ago, 2 economists were also given the Nobel Prize for the theory of endogenous growth. In one case, Paul Romer, in the other case, applied to climate economics. But this goes back to Robert Solow, who won also a prize for exogenous growth in his case. But he made a prescient comment in 1987 when the digital age, the first version of the digital age, was becoming prominent. He says, you can see the computer age everywhere except in GDP statistics. So the rise of software companies didn't necessarily imply that the GDP would increase in any particular appreciable way. So we don't really see this digital revolution in the GDP growth rate. But where we do see it, as Professor Isaac mentioned, is in the firms that are able to collect the data, have proprietary access to the data, process the data, and convert that data into digital goods and services. So a company like Amazon, for instance, invested, and this is around 2022, something like $73 billion in 1 year just in its R&D function. $73 billion just for R&D, which means a subset of its overall revenue, is more than the GDP of more African countries than I care to count. It's even more than respectable countries, in the global north. So what are we missing here? People are investing in knowledge and proxied by R&D, and they're generating trillions in revenue. If we are not investing in R&D, because we're not R&D-driven economies, we're factor-driven economies, what does innovation mean in our context? What does it mean to invest in innovation beyond R&D? R&D is important. The African Union asks us, African nations, to aim for 1% of their GDP. It was by 2040, by 2024, 2024 has passed, by 2030, I don't know what the latest deadline is, but only one African country has achieved 1%, it's Egypt. So, but that's not necessarily a problem, because even if you do achieve the 1%, what does that mean for growth? That's inconclusive. So we decided to go more granular and look at issues of what are the digital capabilities that firms have, what are the digital transformation capabilities that they have, and how can this be applied to outcomes and in particular public value. So if we think about companies like Oracle that do enterprise resource planning, or IBM. So when China invited, I'm using China as an example of a latecomer economy, invited these companies to invest in their country, they acquired the know-how and developed domestic companies. These companies are more dominant. Tencent, Alibaba, Baidu have a larger market share in China than Google or Amazon. But it's not so the capabilities have been endogenized, one. Secondly, they have been brought to bear to address issues of public concern, of public value. So digital inclusion, but also agricultural inclusion, and so on and so forth. So this mapping allows us to look at 4 factors. We look at supply and demand conditions. We look at the institutional environment, the regulatory environment. What kind of data do we need to collect, capture, govern for the purpose of finding opportunities to upgrade our technological capabilities? Of course, technologies for everything are probably available on the market, but we will run out of money if we buy everything we need and don't develop some. And then issues of innovation and change. What are the startups? What are innovation ecosystems, digital ecosystems? What are they working on, and how responsive is it to public value outcomes beyond, including, but also beyond GDP? So this is the kind of thinking we try to bring to bear to provoke this kind of thought that says we need not only be consumers of data, consumers of digital goods and services, but we can also create, starting from our own immediate problems, create digital goods and services that we can even export to other parts of the world. And human development indices would, if those can change in various areas, then we can feel that we are making progress, even if the GDP is not double digits. So that is the overview of the study. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Diran, for a very insightful presentation on the data value chain and what type of indicators one can collect to assess one's position in that economy. I've been informed that Dr. Humphrey Njogu is with us. I'm delighted to have you here. Please join us. So our third speaker, Dr. Njogu, is ICT Policy Advisor and Principal Analyst at the Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis, KIPRA. He is engineer by education, if I remember correctly. He's an expert on cybersecurity. He's a network specialist. He's an ICT specialist. He has participated in a number of national efforts and assignments on issues such as he was active in the proposal for electric mobility and smart solutions. He took part in the preparation of the National Urban Transport Policy. He took part in the road sector investment program, and he took part in the drafting of the cybersecurity regulations, as well as he was a member of the task force for national space policy. Dr. Njogu, we are delighted to have you. And what I thought might be interesting for you to speak about is your views on where we stand with respect to a Pan-African ICT policy. We have several important initiatives in the last few years. We have the AU Data Policy Framework, digital transformation. We have the, right. We have the Digital Trade Protocol of the Africa Free Trade Agreement. We have the new AI regulations. Are these sufficient? Do we need more Pan-African harmonized approaches to data governance and ICT policy in general? And what sort of challenges do we face in implementation? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Isaac, for that. Good morning, participants. My name is Humphrey White Njogu, and I really apologize for coming quite late for this. I had an assignment in Nakuru. Yeah, good. Now, back to the question that you have asked. Yeah, there's so much that we've done from an African point of view when it comes to preparing to embrace digital technologies. Of course, also, we are also driven by what is also happening at the global level, because we've seen there is so much that is, huge potential in terms of digital technologies transforming the traditional economies that we have been enjoying over time. Just maybe to highlight just maybe the key elements that have seen across these major policy documents that we have crafted in the continent. One, we noticed that when it comes to embracing digital technologies, issues of infrastructures are very key. Digital infrastructure. We can't actually be able to move the way we expect if we don't invest in the infrastructure. So secondary is to build skills. Digital skills are very key, both for those who are going to drive the digital technologies and also for those who are going to also to enjoy from these technologies, and that is the consumer point of view. Third is about embracing innovations. We all know that we can't actually be able to enjoy everything if we are not innovative. There are a lot of challenges that actually we are facing, and we have to be very innovative, embracing the innovation culture. The other thing that I also feel it's also very key also to consider, and actually this is also borrowed from the best practice of what actually is happening globally, is about the digital business. Traditionally, businesses have enjoyed a lot of benefits in terms of productivity, but with digital technologies, we are able to be more productive. We are also able to be more competitive and all that. Now, based on these key tenets or key principles that I've just mentioned, at the continent level, we have various policy documents, largely driven by African Union. So the body has been very active, working together with like-minded partners like World Bank, with EU, also with the selected countries to really to support the formulation of these digital policy initiatives. And I just want maybe to pick just a few of them. I know Isaac has just mentioned just a few of them. Now, today we are enjoying AI, and from an African point of view, there is AU AI strategy that is really providing a roadmap when it comes to embracing AI technologies. And of course, also this has also really impacted various African countries. Today we have 15 to 20 countries that have developed their national AI strategy, largely influenced by what is happening at the continent level. We also have the data protection and data governance framework at the AU level, and a lot of countries, more than 50 countries, really have actually have signed to this treaty and all that. And of course, also the other one that I also feel is very key is the digital transformation strategy for Africa, which is providing a roadmap for 10 years, that is from 2020 to 2030. So this particular policy framework is really meant to provide that integrated, give vision and also to help the African countries to develop an integrated digital economy. There are also other selected initiatives, including Digital Economy for Africa initiative. This is a joint initiative by African Union and the World Bank, so that every individual, every business, every government is going to be connected by 2030. That's the aspiration of this initiative. There is also the PREDA, which normally, fully is a policy regulatory initiative for Digital Africa, a joint initiative of African Union, EU, and ITU, that is actually also meant to really drive the joint, having harmonized policy frameworks. Now, if you look at all these documents, there is one thing that we find, and all of them, they're all telling us that we need, as an African continent, we need to develop one digital marketplace where all of us, you're going to enjoy, every individual, every country, and every business that is in the region. And I think this is actually a good thing. Now, I know there's a lot of progress, and I think I just listened to my fellow panelists talking about some of the benefits actually that we've seen over, over the years. The high penetration of the internet, high mobile, connection rates, and actually some countries actually going beyond universal, access. Like in Kenya, we actually over 100%, and I think this is a good thing. So yes, we still feel that there are also countries that also not have not benefited quite a lot, but I think already the spirit is already put and also set at the continent level. This is the direction that we are going to take. So there are also projections that indicate that the continent will be having more than 1 billion more broadband users by 2030. Of course, this is actually telling us that in terms of global connectivity, we expect Africa to have also high numbers of connection rates when it comes to both the internet and also mobile connectivity. So we know these are key drivers of a digital economy, and I think we have not been enjoying so much. Now, there are a lot of challenges that we still face. We are not there. We are not yet there. Though there are progress that actually have made. So some of the key challenges that I just want to mention is that as a continent, we still remain one of the poorest, in terms of connectivity. So issues of digital divide, they're actually very present, very real in the continent. Yeah, despite some countries that appear to have made a lot of progress, but you still also have that also majority of the population actually using low technology devices, the 2G mobile phones. Internet is still not affordable, and again we find that we are not actually able to enjoy the benefits, the digital benefits that we are meant actually to enjoy. So I think issues of a digital divide still actually very close to the continent. Now, with what is also happening with these emerging technologies, we also slowly also seeing ourselves being also experiencing a artificial intelligence divide, that is AI divide, because a lot of these technologies are also coming from outside Africa. So again, we also finding ourselves joining that group of countries that are also experiencing AI divide. Though there is so much that is also happening in the continent, but again, we still need to address that gap. I talked about costly devices and services. Internet is not very affordable to a lot of us in the continent, because you find that the last mile connectivity actually is, has not gone into various countries. Some countries I know they have, like in Kenya, when it comes up, when it comes to last mile connectivity, I think there is that initiative by the current government to really to take internet to the last mile connectivity. I mean to actually to the consumers and all that. So I still find there are a lot of issues that we still face, including cyber threats. The continent is actually being very young in terms of embracing technology. So we also find ourselves, receiving, we also on the receiving end when it comes to these increasing cyber threats that we see today. Last but not least, I would also want to say that, despite the efforts that we're also making, we still find that countries are also making their own policies that are also not looking at the aspect of integrated. So we're still suffering from fragmented policies. And actually this is also a big barrier when it comes to closed border data flow. So in case we want to, for us to achieve the dream of having one single market, digital market, data has to really be a key driver to support this. So you find that we still have isolated, policies. We have our own data protection policy. We have our cyber security. Some countries have not, They have not subscribed to the Maraba Convention. So we still have a lot of gaps that we still need to address so that we're able to harness from these digital technologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this presentation, Dr. Njoku. I'd like to especially underline the importance of, among the many important points that you made, the importance of digital infrastructure and affordability, something that is almost the first necessary step for all the rest to come in for the data economy. And you also mentioned, of course, the importance of AI strategies and data protection, which is really one of the main components of the data governance systems that are implemented. And with respect to these two, actually now we're living in an interesting period geopolitically. So I come from Turkey, and in Turkey a lot of the digital regulations were fashioned after the EU. And you have the Brussels effect, and I believe the Brussels effect has also been quite important for sub-Saharan Africa as well. A lot of the data protection legislation at least was inspired by what was happening in Brussels, and EU was kind of a leader, and not only with respect to data protection, but also with respect to Digital Markets Act, Digital Services Act, which try to address issues of monopolization on the one hand, and issues of misinformation on the other. And AI aggravates these dangers, both monopolization and misinformation. And now we're living in an interesting period where it looks like, from what you see from the papers, that the EU may be preparing for some degree of backsliding on these issues as a result of pressure from big tech on the one hand, large companies, and the Trump administration. And this puts countries like Turkey, like Kenya, South Africa, Brazil, India, in an interesting position. It could be that if the EU really does backslide on these issues, could it be possible that at least stronger countries in the South who have taken important steps, I can count Kenya, Ghana, Uganda, South Africa, Brazil is a very important player, to take this agenda of regulating the digital space to ensure less misinformation on the one hand and more inclusivity and less monopolization on the other. So in the second round of our session, it would be interesting for the panelists as well as members of the audience if they have any comments on that. It's really, compared to even 3 years ago, we're living through an interesting time in terms of data governance and the data economy. That's one thing that I thought. I'm very sad that Mr. Otieno is not here, because I had so data protection is indeed a crucial element of data governance. It's one of the instruments that gives a little bit of bargaining power to providers of data against big companies that capture and use and make profit and create value out of data. So that's how I see data protection. But at the same time, we know from studies that have been done in the EU that data protection or adherence to the requirements of data protection legislation is costly. And there are studies that show that this cost is especially larger, relatively speaking, for smaller companies. It's easier for large companies to adapt to the requirements of data protection legislation. But it's much more costly, relatively speaking, for social companies. So I was going to ask the opinions of the Data Protection Commissioner, the Office of Commissioner of Kenya, on their experience with respect to that. What are the problems of implementation? So if there's any thoughts on that as well, it might be useful to hear too, both from the panelists and as well as from the audience. So we still have quite a bit of time. So we can start with questions. Maybe we'll go for another round before we start with the questions. If they have, now that you have listened to each other, if you have anything to add to what has been said already, and with respect to the questions that I've raised, and I can start with Dr. Amaja, a few minutes, and then we'll go for questions from the audience.
Thank you. I would wish to touch on the geopolitics and how Africa fits there. I think the way we are seeing the two approaches, the European approach, the American approach, and how they are likely to impact on Africa. I think for the US approach is mainly market-driven and with almost very minimal regulation. And therefore, there is a bit of emphasis on free flow of data across borders, but there's a huge risk in terms of weak privacy protection. There is also danger of dominance by the big tech companies and a bit of limited accountability. On the other hand, we have the European approach that seeks to do more protection and regulation of the way data is collected, protected, and even stored. And they have put some acts towards guiding that. So there is more regulation on this side and less regulation, the American approach. And the danger, of course, the emphasis the European approach is data sovereignty, privacy, and the ethical standards. But the danger I think I see in this approach is that, of course, there will be compliance costs. There could be slower innovation because of the many regulations, and there could also be potential barriers to global data exchange or flows. However, in terms of the implication for us in developing countries and in Africa in particular, there is potential for fragmented regulatory frameworks, and Africa may be forced, or there will be pressure on us to adapt to one of the two, which of course will complicate our compatibility of data as nations. There could also be an implication in terms of digital colonization. That is where, unless we have very strong local frameworks, we are likely to be passive consumers of foreign technology and the data governance norms, unless we come up with a very strong framework. It could also have an implication on trade and investment if we pursue divergent standards. It could cause cross-border digital trade and maybe disrupt the global value chains. So there might be a call to mix the two, and For me, what I think Africa could do is to develop a continental framework based on the strengthening of the African Union data protection framework, where we harmonize our regulations, more so under the African Continental Free Trade Area. There is need for harmonized framework for us to benefit from this technology. The second, I think, step Africa can do is to do a hybrid sort of approach, combining the good aspects of the American approach and the good aspects of the European approach. That is where you do a bit of protection, particularly in privacy and ensuring ethical standards, and also a bit of innovation, or providing incentives for innovation, so that at least we do not stay for that. Another aspect I think Africa could capitalize on is investment in capacity or local capacity, so that at least we understand what is going on in terms of we build our data centers, cloud infrastructure, because that's the next line of technology, so that at least we reduce the dependency on other systems. And lastly, I think we need to promote regional data governance, where we create compatible standards across our African countries. I think that is what I can add in terms of the geopolitics and the dichotomy between the US and the European approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So the emphasis on having a strong Africa-wide framework is crucial when navigating these, let's call them, international pressures. Thank you for that intervention. Diran?
All right. So I fully accept what the speaker said about a strong continental data governance framework, but I would like to add also flexible, because if it's too rigid, there are opportunities to actually allow for certain actors to have access to data, because we believe that they can be more productive for the society, for the overall benefit than others. And of course, we don't want to be too open, because then otherwise anyone can capture value from the data. I think the way I want to come at this from the point of view of the geopolitics is that there is a sort of hype cycle, an overvaluation of AI companies in particular, which project trillions of dollars in revenue. And sometimes, even when you talk to people who are embedded in those industries, it's difficult to see how the investment is going to lead to such, astronomical revenue. And maybe it's important for Africa not to be caught up in this hype cycle, but be more diligent about what are the opportunities and what are the outcomes that we want. Maybe some examples are in order here. So we've heard about some of the big fintech companies like Flutterwave and Paystack in Nigeria that are trying to meet this market for the unbanked. But there seems to be a trend in which part of the ambition is to show that they're competitive enough so that they can be acquired by larger companies in the US, in Silicon Valley. So they're bought out for $100 or $200 million, which is, for a young person of 35 years old, that's, you can retire forever and ever. But when those companies are bought by larger multinationals, presumably the data is gone with that. So is there a way to pay more attention to these kinds of companies and encourage them to bring their considerable skills to bear in a more national, regional, continental development orientations? There's another company of equivalent competence called OnAfrique, which invests in interoperable payment platforms. So it's not customer facing, but works with banks, regulators, credit card companies to allow the unbanked to have access to the digital services that the banked have. They, on the other hand, acquired a US company because that company had capabilities that they thought were needed to embed into their companies. So you see the difference. Some African startups, their dream is to be acquired by US multinationals so they can become millionaires overnight. Another one of equivalent competence says, no, we're going to acquire a US company to reinforce our own capabilities and broaden the needs, the inclusive digital access that is our mandate beyond being a firm. So I think this kind of nuance is important to capture from a data governance perspective. In terms of misinformation, and I'll stop here, this data is not neutral. There's data that's meaningful and there's data that's less meaningful. So the sense making, the wisdom that comes out of it. In particular, African language, AI and LLM models that make people in rural areas, but even people in cities, services that are more responsive to them because you can just talk to an agent in your language and the agent gives you the answers you need about where to register for this, register for a business, where to find the nearest clinic, and so on and so forth. It turns out that the Distributed AI Research Lab, which was founded by Timnit Gebru, who resigned from Google, it turns out that African language AI programmers provide more reliable information to African language users of these AI agents than if they were to just rely on Gemini, on ChatGPT to give them information that's relevant to them in their context. So again, endogenous technological capabilities can mitigate this idea of misinformation because if I ask you how are you in your language and the AI agent says something that doesn't correspond to the question, that's a wrong platform, but another one is more responsive, then your judgment tells you that this is more correct. So endogenous capabilities is an important lens to allow us to filter, on the one hand, what's useful or relevant, and on the other hand, what kind of data we think is important to protect and what kind of data is important to share. So it's just a lens that I think can help to clarify some of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Diran, for emphasizing the very crucial role of endogenous capabilities in screening what's useful and what may actually not only be not useful, but may have negative effects on various economic and social outcomes. Dr. Njogu.
Yeah, just to add on what the other panelists have said, I think looking at the continent, I see we are very unique in terms of we have multiple languages. We also have a continent that is using multiple currencies. We also have fragmented policies. I think for me, these are unique, I'll call them challenges that we can also turn them to be something very positive. So think about like language, multiple languages. They are very key. They define who we are. They actually, they represent the culture that of who we are as Africans. So for me, really is to really take advantage of technologies, or really there are technologies that can actually help us to preserve these languages. The AI models that are there, I think they're already proving to be a key enabler in terms of helping us to drive our culture, to help us to develop a better society. So I think it's more of just leveraging on these technologies so that we are able to preserve what we have, and also to help us to prosper. Now, touching a little bit on localization. African digital initiatives, they're actually looking for localizing in terms of building our own infrastructure. So if you look at around, various countries actually are investing quite a lot in public digital infrastructure. And that means that government have started recognizing the need to see digital technologies as public good. You know, so for instance, you see here in Kenya, so the government is putting a public Wi-Fi across major areas like hospitals, like market, where all of us, we can actually be able to enjoy. So I think this is a trend. I think I see it happening recently, where government actually seeing technologies as public good that actually need to be enjoyed by everyone. And what that means is that we actually now developing an enabler that can actually drive the whole ecosystem, the value chain for digital technology. You cannot imagine what actually can happen when we are able to define clearly activities, right from if, for instance, if you are able to build our own factory here, software company, semiconductor, of course, we do have, like here in Kenya, we have a semiconductor company, which I think has not received significant attention in the market, whereby everyone is really looking into it in terms of engaging the company to meet the local needs. So I think for me is, as a continent, we also need to support our local market, local products, so that as we think about this localization, we're also speaking from one point. So that I think that aspect of it, relying so much on importing technologies, we can still be able to also to develop our own devices and support our local needs. And I think it's really happening, and there's a huge potential to really tap on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Najib. And what I hear, one of the important things I hear is the importance of developing and investing in local public goods, and that's that aspect of the emerging technologies. Okay, we can give the floor to the audience. If we could get questions from the audience, please. If you could, okay, in the back. If you could introduce yourself and also indicate who you would like to point out as to respond to your question.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anyambura. I work with AMREF, and I work in the medical field. I would like to direct this question to Dr. Jogu, who has talked about local public good. So what are the digital innovations that are being developed in Africa, especially in Kenya, to address specific issues like climate change and healthcare problems that we are facing in the country? Thank you so much.
Let's take like 3, respond, and then we'll take another 3. Yes,
all right.
please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And this is a really interesting topic. So this question is not, I'm first going to give a comment and then a question, just to all the panelists. So my name is Elizabeth Kasekende, and I work for Bank of Uganda. So in the discussions, I think one of the panelists mentioned how economists tend to use aggregated data. But actually, lately, we are using more of big data, and we're using real-time data to answer economic questions. So this is really topical when we talk about data security, cyber security, all that comes in quite handy. And also given the fact that Africa's population is quite young, it is a great opportunity for us to see how we can build capacity in terms of AI and to try and ensure that our population is ready, and at the same time we have to ensure security of our data. Which brings me to the question that I think cuts across all panelists. AI is currently advancing much, much faster than all the policies and regulations that we've talked about. So how can we balance the policies at the same time without stifling innovation? And the fact that AI is moving much faster, I think we're kind of playing catch up. So in your view, how can we balance that? Thank you.
Thank you. And one more question, please.
Thank you very much, and good morning. My name is Abraham. I work in the public finance space. My question is to Dr. Amanja for KNBS. One of the things that we are observing, and I'm involved in that space, is the increase of citizen-generated data that basically has to do with how different citizens want to contribute but also benefit from the work of KNBS. Now, enter AI world, and the aggregation of that data is even faster. And I think I just wanted to hear from the KNBS perspective, and especially the institute that you spoke about, what are some of the plans to better utilize citizen-generated data, but also to feed it back in terms of policy solutions? Because I think on one hand, you have, I think what the other speaker has just spoken about, you have technology that is moving faster than the policy improvements that you want to see. But then you also have a young population that is gearing to provide solutions to their world. So just interested in how that interface is playing with KNBS sitting at the very center of collecting and generating that data. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go for one round, and then I think we'll have time to get some additional questions. Maybe we'll go with the same sequence, since it looks like everyone, one of the questions was for everyone. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to answer to the last question. I think at the Bureau we are alive to the fast changing world of data ecosystem. Last week, but one, we had a National Statistical Day that we celebrated here in Kenya. I think it was the first time we are doing that. And we invited almost everybody who has interest in the data, from the very young people, we had the universities there, just to promote and see how together we can move forward. And we had emphasized on this issue of citizen-generated data, because we want to make our data granular at the same time, safe and also reliable. So, and that's why we are revising our Statistics Act to make sure that we capture all these. We are very open to any suggestion that we improve the way we do things, but we are not lying complacent. We know, I think it was Elizabeth who mentioned about AI changing faster than the policies. We have to keep alert. We have to keep aware that these things are changing continuously. And therefore, we have to build partnerships that will ensure that we are changing with the times, that we are there. Of course, sometimes innovation can be ahead of the policy because of the bureaucracy and all that, because we do, like in Kenya, we have to go for public participation and many other things. But I think together with the partnerships that we are building across board, we will be able to sort out some of these challenges. They are there, and we have to live with them. But I think for us to emphasize on partnerships so that we will solve our problems together. I think that's the only way I can say that, but at least the Bureau is really capturing, and we have already started that science unit within us, and we are capitalizing on the young people, young graduates, to come and assist us develop that system. Of course, together with the experts in the area. In terms of safety nets, that one I leave to the technicians because I'm not an IT expert, but at least in terms of policy, I know we are really putting things together so that we move together as a nation, as a region, as a continent. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take Elizabeth's comment and question. Thank you for pointing out that more responsive global analysis are adopting AI techniques, just as even the old, the more conventional economic techniques are also striving to be more responsive and more accurate in the analysis of an overall society as opposed to one individual or one community. But that's also important to grasp nuances in experiences. So the two are symbiotic in my estimation. But thanks for pointing out these advances in that Uganda is already adopting. But your question about balancing an emerging technology like AI with regulation or policy, I think it's important to see policy not as policing, but as an opportunity to learn, opportunities to experiment, and opportunities to elevate insights that are more beneficial. So it's a co-evolutionary process between innovators who are necessarily ahead of old policies and policies that need to be brought to bear to respond to that. So that's really the way to see it. So this idea of disruptive innovation, which people talk about disruption in the colloquial sense, but it's a whole big theory in the economics of innovation and innovation management. But for you to disrupt an incumbent, you actually need unregulated markets. You actually need open policies that haven't been defined to serve underserved markets. So it's really an opportunity for innovation that we can seize because these have not been established across the world. It's new to everyone. And our innovators that are able to tap into this policy sort of black box, those that are serving underserved communities, then policy can respond to them more favorably. And those who are taking advantage of an unregulated environment to produce goods and services that are maybe not desirable, policy can then restrict those. So I think this idea of policy learning in conjunction with innovators is maybe a more beneficial way to look at it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me respond to a question by Anne from AMREF. So Anne, you asked about some of the examples that we have locally in terms of supporting, especially the digital initiative supporting climate change. Yeah, I think just before I go into the initiatives, I mentioned that there's so much that is actually happening across the continent where governments are actually investing in the public digital infrastructure. So for instance, the data center, the connectivity, infrastructure, incentives for devices and all that, which actually they are creating an enabling environment where businesses, individuals, and companies can actually access technology as a common good for them or as a service to them. Now, the beauty of these initiatives that actually that comes from digital technologies, and in particular for climate change, they cut across all the sectors. So I just maybe want to pick just a few examples just to illustrate what I meant. So for instance, if you look at agriculture, so agriculture is a key sector that gives us food, that give us support our livelihood. So there are a lot of digital innovations, but in particular applications that have been developed by our local programmers in the continent to support farmers in terms of even doing the prediction of the weather, telling them that tomorrow there will be rain. This is where you can actually take your produce to, and again also telling them this is where you need to do one or two things about supporting your agricultural activities. So actually there is so much that that we've done in terms of digital innovations. Again, look at even water provision of water services, a key thing. So some of the digital innovations, they're actually supporting rural communities to know which borehole has water, how far that borehole is from your household, and again also even in terms of even predicting which borehole will actually be the next one that the community actually need to rely on. Transport the same. We've seen the likes of the example. Many examples of companies that are actually establishing their presence in African countries, in Nairobi here, in Kigali, I think also a number of African countries, where these vehicles are actually using renewable energy. They're actually being charged. So again, you can see here, this bus is actually really driven by not just the electricity itself, but also powered by computing technology in it. So there is so much that actually is happening in the continent in terms of supporting the climate change, which I think we need to really to appreciate. Now, there is a question that I also need to respond to in terms of what are we doing in terms to guide the development and harness the powers, the benefits that come from artificial intelligence, AI. Yes, I think just like my fellow panelists here say that a policy, the way we see policy should actually, we don't need to see it as a stifling block or to present barriers to innovators or to the growth and development of the technology. Actually, one of the best practice when it comes to developing policies is really to have to provide a roadmap, and especially for these emerging technologies, just indicating that this is the trajectory, or this is the path that we are going to undertake. And you see the beauty of making policies that you always, you can always review, you can always, update it, just to see as the technology is actually evolving. So where we have, the era of actually going for, rigid policies, I think that there is no space for that, especially for these emerging technologies. So the public making process has actually to be very flexible, very agile, to accommodate views, to accommodate challenge. To accommodate the opportunities and the risks that are actually presented by these technologies. And what I've also seen with other countries, or with the best practice, is that they're actually embracing what we are calling the sandboxes, where you're actually supporting innovations, inviting everyone to bring their innovations. They're tested and they are tested and evaluated, and actually you go with the ones that actually support the development of the country. And you also find that there's increasing trend of various countries going for what you call policy labs. So policy labs, this is where you're just testing your ideas and to ensure that you're actually going for the ideas that are helping to support the national development goals of your country. So I think, they already there's a framework to guide that, including also at the EU, at the UN level. At the UN level, there is, I think, a number of maybe 8-9 principles that are guiding the development of the AI, technologies and all that. So I think for me, it's really to be progressive, to be agile, and to accommodate these opportunities and the risk that comes with them. With this, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jogu. Yes, Alison. Talking, yeah, please.
Thank you so much for these really fascinating inputs. So much to say, but I just want to ask a few quick questions and just make one or two points. My name is Alison Gilwald. I'm from Research ICT Africa and the University of Cape Town. Can you hear me? Yep. I firstly, just before I make a comment, I just would like Dr. Amanja to add China to his geopolitical analysis. I think some very interesting policy coming out there, both in terms of digital inclusion, but also on AI and data governance. And then just to comment a little bit on some of the methodologies and the references to the potential of big data and real-time statistics, and comment on what's already been mentioned around the importance of infrastructure, of course, as a necessary condition. But very importantly, when Isaac was mentioning affordability, the enormous demand-side constraints. So Isaac's been involved with the nationally representative demand-side surveys, after access surveys that we've done over many years now, together with the Kenyan National Statistics Office Bureau. And I just wanted to highlight that, you know, although there's about 95% coverage in Kenya, we only have 50% of the population that are even minimally connected. And if we actually use the new meaningful connectivity definitions of the ITU, it's about 25% that are meaningfully connected. As long as these people are adequately connected, all this talk of innovation, this pipeline for innovation, and we know from these studies that the fundamental determinant of whether you're connected or not and how much you use the internet is education and income. So until we address the human development, the human infrastructure side of it, the supply side measures, which, you know, multilateral organizations are continuing to do. The ITU's got another big infrastructure deficit survey going on, Connecting Humanities survey going on. The demand side constraints are not being looked at. And those cannot be got from big data. Those, you have to go out in the field where if we're trying to understand the people who are not connected, why they're not connected, we've got to go out there like we do for a census or a household survey and get that data. So we really need all the funding's kind of rushing towards AI and data and valuation of data, but we actually don't have these basic statistics, which are our primary public good. Our basic statistics as our public good. So just very quickly, just to also add that the African Union Data Policy Framework, very importantly, is not just a data protection framework. It's a data governance framework, you know, a data policy framework. And a lot of the value, especially for the continental free trade area, is around that flow of non-personal data that you could really switch on with the kind of interoperability standards that Dr. Manjan was referring to and that are in the African Union Data Policy Framework. We could actually get some of the underpinnings you know, for the continental free trade area underway. And just to say that it's long until we do get these people digitized, you know, the layering of more advanced technologies over existing inequalities is simply amplifying those inequalities. So simply taking multilateral frameworks or, you know, World Economic Forum or smart frameworks that, you know, for AI policy, for different kinds of policies, and putting them on top of our existing inequalities doesn't address those. We absolutely need policy and regulatory intervention to address that, not only the inequality of citizens so that they're represented in the data, this big data that's now being used. They're never going to be represented in ChatGPT or etc. So we can use them for local language modeling, great. But we still don't have those big representation in those big foundational models. And so we'll continue to be out of it. And it's for this reason we've got to regulate access to data for our researchers. It's in the African Union Data Policy Framework. Open data, public data, that our African researchers and entrepreneurs can access first so that we can get access to these markets and compete and not remain dependent on these big tech. So innovation is for us. There's a big access to Data Alliance. The UN Rapporteur on Human Rights has actually made access to data her theme for this year. So this is really an opportunity for us to provide African data to inform these multilateral frameworks and that are kind of, you know, well-intentionally imposed on the continent, but aren't based on any evidence base, because there isn't in many areas an evidence base on the continent.
Thank you, Professor Ellison Gilbert. This is like, let's put our feet firmly on the ground. Indeed, affordability, I mean, the research shows that it's not just a question on the supply side. More importantly, it's the real constraint currently seems to be on the demand side. In other words, you have households and firms who do have access to infrastructure, but who have very limited use of the internet. And even more limited use of internet for business purposes. So the infrastructure is there, but adoption is not there. And we suspect affordability, crucial, and information about the usefulness of internet. Both are crucial determinants of willingness to pay for connectivity. And the second emphasis is on open access availability and open access to data, which is really crucial. It comes down to, it's related to this issue of protecting and supporting and enlarging local public goods. I think the two are very intimately connected, so thank you for these interventions. We're past our time, but maybe one more question or comment if it is available. Yes, please, from the back.
Thank you so much. I'm Esme Kanyumbu from the Reserve Bank of Malawi and from the Economics Association of Malawi. I'll talk from the point of the financial sector. Coming from the central bank, you know, the era of digitalization has brought in some crucial risks to the financial sector. You may be aware that cyber attacks have been very common in the financial sector. And we have been seeing some efforts in bringing in financial inclusion in most African countries. But cyber attacks is also another thing that is discouraging financial inclusion and is also minimizing the efforts by central banks within their mandate of bringing in financial stability. And this also calls for moving with speed in investment in cyber resilience. So I just wanted to make that comment to say we need to move with speed in investing in cyber security, because this is also one aspect that is bringing down the efforts that we are all trying to put forward. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for this crucial, and the emphasis on this crucial dimension that was not discussed extensively here, but cybersecurity, which is very closely related to trust. It's you're not going to have trust without very strong cybersecurity. Well, I think one of the objectives of this panel was to think about further research topics and agendas. I think we have our books and labs filled with many topics and ideas. I'm very grateful to the participants of the panel and for the excellent questions from the audience. And I think we can now close the panel. Thank you very much.
Please, panelists, stay on for token of appreciation. I'll request the chair to gift the panelists photo. Can we get some photograph? So we'll go for a short tea break because we are expected back at 10:30. So I think 15 minutes tea break should be would suffice. The Pash Farm workshop has been